Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Khalil Demhini, and I'm Director of Content Marketing at Digital Niche Agency. Today, we have Charles from Atombeam. Charles, how are you doing?
Good. Khalil, how are you?
Doing great, doing great. And Charles, do you want to introduce our guest here and then just go more of a background and really explain what's the purpose of the webinar today?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm joined today with our board member and advisor, Boris Becker, who's a retired two-star admiral who ran all of the Navy's communications systems. He was the guy who managed a lot of things in satellites and a lot of things in ground communication. What he did was very closely connected to what we do, and he understands at a very important level what it is that it would take for us to integrate our stuff, our various kinds of software, into the kinds of communications the Navy and the other armed forces use. And so that gets us to the topic of today, which is mostly going to be a discussion about the progress we've made with where we are with our DoD contracts and more that we think are coming, as well as a discussion of, I want to lay on everybody the idea of this vision statement of what we do and what the potential is, because it's so big, it's hard to get your head around. And so I've talked about it a couple other times and ways, but I'm going to do it again because I think it gets to the heart of why this is such a big deal, what we have. So without further ado, if you like, I'm going to crank up the webinar or the PowerPoint.
Yep. And everyone in the audience, if there is a question at any time during this webinar, please drop it in the Q&A chat box. We are going to have some time at the end to answer any of your questions.
Right. Here we go. Oops. So anyway, I want everybody to see the cool slide I've made. So at any rate, so that's the topic of today. We're going to talk about where we are with various things in DoD, as well as like this broad vision. Where does this go in the long run? And with that, we have Admiral Becker there with a junior jumper who's a little bit of an aged photo, but it still applies in my view. Anyway, quickly on what we're doing. First of all, Admiral Becker is going to talk about what we've been doing with the DoD, but I'm going to hit first a little on what traction and news we have on the various things we're working on in the commercial side. First of all, I think many of you know we signed a deal with Ericsson. There was a process through that by which we had to go through a testing process. They want a field test. They want to check and see how long it takes to onboard a customer. They want to bang on it to make sure it's solid. They do all this stuff. We've passed all that, quote unquote, with flying colors. So now we're good. And now we're going to start moving into serious discussions about onboarding some of their customers who buy their gateways. And the brand name of those gateways is Cradlepoint, in case you ever want to look it up. Viasat is working with us right now on an oil company. They have a similar process. They want to see it work. They want to see it work in the field. They want to know this is real. They've seen it. And we have really, again, passed that with flying colors, and we continue to pass it. And there is another relationship that I got to hold back on the name because we haven't signed it yet, but their CTO is super enthusiastic about what we're doing. It's one of the most important companies in IoT. They're all about the organizing the process and consulting with companies on, hey, I'm a big company and I want to deploy 100,000 whatevers, and they're connected, and I want to know, I need help in doing it. That's what these guys do. They have 2,000 customers. They want to put 12 of them on like as soon as we can. And we're going to do a big webinar in December, which will probably include them, potentially Ericsson, and probably the guy who was the original guy who started MQTT. which is the main protocol for this stuff. And then we were just in Oklahoma last week. I was with the CRO and JC Lynn, and we visited 3 oil companies, or one oil company and 2 oil service companies, all of them pretty enthusiastic. We're starting to really focus on energy because there is a lot of need for it, and these guys have a lot of money. So it all works out. And just quickly on the business model, the way it works is we have a monthly SaaS charge, and it varies from, it depends how much data they send. If they only send a little bit of data, we don't charge very much. If they send a lot of data, we charge a lot more. That's why you see such a huge variance between the small and the big numbers. But the typical customer might have thousands of connections. There's 2 in South America that each have 4,000. One of the oil companies we're talking to has 3 million. This could be a really good, cool thing, and we're on the cusp of being able to sign those up. And quickly on where we are with Neurpac being our flagship product that has been launched as a commercial product, and mentioning again the CTO of this IoT company, he said he found it to be one of the most intuitive, easiest to use interfaces he's ever experienced. This, I know it's hard to, unless you're in this industry, to understand this, but onboarding customers, how long it takes them, how hard it is so important. It's like the engineers have been hammering on this problem, making it really fast. And now we're under 2 minutes, which is really unbelievable. And we were showing this oil company that we have going on right now, 76 compaction ratio. They're saving a lot of money already on their site. And we are already looking at the actual documents. So we're hoping we get that signed up soon. And then quickly on next gen, which is a new version of Neurpac that from the ground up will be built to be an enterprise level. So we can go to the Chevrons of the world and the very big, sophisticated companies with those. And so that's being architected right now. And it has a couple of use cases I can't talk about, but if I could, I would blow everybody away. It's unbelievable, but unfortunately I can't. And quickly on the other 2, NERCOM, that's currently under the contract with the Air Force Research Laboratory. They they perceive it to be a super flexible potential capability, and they want us to focus on it. They want us to get to a phase 3. And the LCM, it is now prototyping. We're going through a rapid prototyping process, and we put in a proposal to the Army to fund it. And so we're waiting to hear on that. Don't know yet on that, but there's a lot of other opportunities if that didn't work. Now, turning it over to Admiral Becker to talk about where we are on defense.
Thanks, Charles, and thanks everybody for being here today. And I will give a shout out to my shipmate, Charles, for dropping this bit of eye candy in there. The venerable EA6B, this one sporting Marine color out of Charles' Marine-to-be son. Just like a Prowler, though, I'm a bit of a museum piece when it comes to my operational days. But I did get to spend a lot of time in program management and acquisition of complex systems and building and maintaining complex systems for the D.O.D and for the intelligence community. And then I spent a bit of time in industry, and I bring that up because I've seen startups before. I've seen what it takes to figure out what the TAM is and then go after that TAM and build a pipeline. And that's one of the things that attracted me to come and join the team with Atombeam, was to see the vision for what that commercial TAM is, which is, in my estimation, really wide open. But then also to apply to what's at my heart, which is the passion for the mission. And I think there's a tremendous amount of mission space inside the DoD and IC, where the technology that this team has come up with and has been advancing for a number of years is really poised to make it a deep mission impact. You can see some of the line items there of what's been going on. It's great that we're moving forward with NORCOM and AFRL. The AFRL's folks that are working this, they are the leading experts in the Air Force on this kind of technology. So the fact that they have the confidence in our team to deliver on what they think is step function capability really is a testament to what our NURCOM team has been putting together. And getting to a phase 3, that'll be a really big deal. On the Space Force side, continuing to look at how they can implement different aspects of Neurpac. And then just looking forward with LCM, I don't think we've yet to scratch the surface on what that could mean for the 5 services, Air Force included. Right now, though, the really tremendous target, the 5-meter target, is Link 16. Let's talk about Link 16 for a moment. And Link 16, what happened on 1 through 15? Where'd they go? Irrelevant, but I can tell you I flew with some aircraft that had Link 4. Link 16 is today's link in the Air Force, in the Army, in the Navy, in the Marine Corps, and very key with our partners and allies. It is proliferated throughout the global enterprise that is the United States and our friends and allies in a way to communicate and exercise command and control across surface ships, aircraft, ground vehicles, and command and control nodes themselves. Link 16 is the link. There are others, there are particular aircraft links that are specialized, but everything is tied to this architecture of Link 16. And the number there is 100,000 plus active terminals. So hold that number in mind. It's how everybody communicates. Now, given the pace of acquisition in the DoD, that means that everybody is communicating on, ancient's probably the wrong word to use, but communicating on senior technology, right? Experienced technology that, say again?
Silver technology.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Technology that dates back initially in design and concept to the 80s. And it is very effective at what it enabled and how it enabled the United States and our partners and allies to step function ahead of potential adversaries. And if you look back into conflicts in which we have found ourselves, we've been able to get inside of any adversary's decision loop, in part because we've been able to communicate at speed. And that comes back to Link 16. So foot stomping on the criticality of this capability. But it's old, and it moves data at speeds that were impressive once upon a time, but today, not so much. We have these platforms, right? These aircraft, 5th-gen aircraft, and we've got modern 21st century capabilities that are generating an enormous amount of data. But how do you turn those data into knowledge? All right, how do you go from data to information to knowledge and then into a decision? You've got to move that information from one place, i.e. an end node, back to a command and control node, or somewhere where it's netted so that platforms can work together in a network. But we have to move more data, and we have to move it more quickly. It just, this isn't fast enough. Slide, please. Now, there's a limitation to it right now. And you can look this up on Wikipedia, Google, your search of your choice. But the architecture of Link 16 is limited in its structural architecture about just how fast messages can move and how much data can be put into those messages. So there really isn't going to be a major step function in the fundamental structure of Link 16 without a very heavy lift. I go back to that number, 100,000 plus. If I've had to execute touch labor on 100,000 plus terminals, well, how long is that going to take, and is it ever going to happen? But if I could do something in software, if I can somehow in software, without touch labor, without changing hardware, have a 10%, 20% improvement in the speed of data moving through that architecture, then that's a significant increase in mission capability. If I could get a 25% increase, wow, think about what that would mean in moving volumes of information and being able to operate on today's modern battlefield and in today's modern battle space. Slide, please. 10%, 20%, that's not good enough. We have demonstrated that by going after the place where we can make a change now, without touch labor, without affecting hardware, where we can go after the IP backend architecture of Link 16, and you can look up this term JREAP and see what it means, but if we can go after that JREAP slice of the architecture, we can have a change that isn't 10% or 25% or even 50%. We can have a 200% change in the capability and capacity of that link. Now I can say we can do that. I can show you the math that it should work out. I can show you PowerPoints about it, but let me show you this instead. Slide, please. There are the data. We took actual unclassified JREAP data, ran it through this technology, and demonstrated pretty much out of the box over 50% compaction. Well, 50% compaction, I think I could get twice as much in if I do that right. That's a huge impact. It's a huge mission impact for Link 16 and for the mission. And we did that, like I said, with software. Now, imagine what we could do if we get upgun the hardware. I think there's a Star Trek 4 for you geeks like me. Would that be worse than the D.O.D? This is an incredible step function in a fundamental capability for the most important warfighting capability right now that the Navy and the Air Force and the Army are working on. If you follow current events in the Navy, they call it Project Overmatch. In the Army, it's convergence. In the joint world, it's JADC2 or CJADC2. This is a huge lift for that capability. And we have data that show that we can do it. Slide, please. We can tell you all day that we think this is important, but I can tell you that we asked a couple of really important folks in the Air Force and the Army, excuse me, in the Navy, if they thought this was something worthwhile pursuing. And they got it right away. And the people we were talking to have been the program managers for Link 16 terminals and Link 16 capabilities across the DoD. So they know what they're talking about. They thought that this was an incredible capability just inside that JREAP architecture. And their direction to us was go figure out how to put it in the terminals. I spent 33 years in the Navy, I can take an order. So we're going to figure out how we can get this working with our industry partners into terminals. I go back to that comment, 100,000 plus terminals, and shift to my business hat. A total addressable market that has 100,000 plus end units where I have to put something that might have a per unit price associated with it. I think I'm interested in that. And so there we are. We have a capability that can have a game-changing increase in the capacity of a broadly distributed and broadly deployed system in both the United States and our allies and partners. We have interest from senior leaders who've said this is, I think technical term is cool stuff, and you should do more with it. We have the team in place to advance the capability, and we have data that show that it's real. I think that's a winning combination. Slide, please. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Charles. Now that I've talked to you about the incredible opportunity in this piece of the market, Charles can talk to you about the rest of the market.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Admiral. Really, this really applies even on the DoD side as well. But the basic idea is to give you a sense of how it works right now when you have some gadget out in the field generating datagrams, generating little messages, and what happens to it, how it moves, and what happens when it gets to where it's going, which is going to be a data center, generally speaking. And so really what you got a whole lot of little things, like here's an industrial robot and some temperature sensors and some other stuff. I don't know what it is, but whatever. They all send their information to a gateway. And the point of the gateway is to gather it all up. And so that's the functionality of the Ericsson gateways, is they're taking in data from a bunch of sensors and bunching it together and sending it. Now, one of the options that's available when you send the data over a gateway generally is going to be encryption. However, it's turned off a lot of the time. And the reason that is true is because it's slowing down the data, it's making it bigger, it's causing all sorts of issues. And you got to decrypt it when it arrives where it's going. And so you add it all up and you say, okay, what's the harm? I'll just send it bare without any security. And so lots of people are doing that now, and it's a problem. And it's going to start biting people. It already is biting people. But then think about what's happening. So you either say you're encrypting, you encrypt it, you send it, and then it arrives, it gets decrypted, then it gets compressed and then stored. And then if you want to do something with it, you can't do anything with compressed data. It's not visible. It's not searchable or usable by servers in a data center. So what do? You have to decompress it. And first of all, you got to find the data you want, which in a giant data lake, that's what they call a whole pile of data put together, is maybe very difficult. Most analysts spend 80% of their time finding and cleaning the data, not actually doing analysis. And so having it more visible is a huge goal. And what is the problem with all this? You have clogged links. This IoT data is growing massively, 23% a year. It's the next year it's going to be 90 zettabytes, which less than 1% can be transported over the networks that you have. And it can't, there's too much to store it by far, etc. So that's a big issue. Second is networks are vulnerable. 98% isn't encrypted. So that means that you have a problem trying to even get the data from A to B in a secure way. And the other thing is you're doing a lot of computing. You have to encrypt it if you're going to encrypt it. And when it gets to the edge, you decrypt it. I'm sorry, it gets to the data center, you decrypt it, and then you compress it, and then you have to decompress it, and blah, blah, blah. This goes on and on. It's a lot of extra computing power use, etc. And once it's stored, it's not protected. If somebody goes in and steals the data in a data center, they can just decompress it and use it. Everybody has the compression algorithm. What you're doing is, in effect, is you have a really old set of ideas that are just really kludgy. Like from beginning to end, you have vulnerability and unsecure lack of security. You have clogged pipes. You have data once it's stored is vulnerable. You have lots of issues. And so what do we do in a new world order in which Atombeam rules? And I'm talking about here a Neurpac Plus, which is the kind of Neurpac that encrypts as well. Not that you already have pretty strong security, even if you don't use Neurpac Plus, but let's say we do, because that's encrypting as well as compacting. So right on the edge, from the little gadgets, even like a little temperature sensor, you can't do this with temperature sensors and other little small things now. You can't. Compression doesn't work on these little data, these little messages. It just is not functional. You also can't use encryption on them because encryption requires fairly heavy duty processing. So you're not going to put it on a cheap little temperature sensor. So the data coming from the very edge, from the sensors to the gateway is vulnerable. And with Atombeam, with Neurpac Plus, it's reduced in size, 75% on average, and it's encrypted right at that little gadget. And it sends it to the gateway. And the gateway does its thing. It gathers it up and sends it off the other side. But now it's encrypted. And by the way, it's 75% smaller. So 75% smaller means, and it's done almost in real time. That is, say, a few microseconds, a few millionths of a second. And so the consequence of all that means is that because right from the edge, it gets smashed down in size and sent over, that means you roughly have 4 times more effective bandwidth than you do with today's way of doing it. And it's encrypted too. And it can work on like a 10-cent processor and a little temperature sensor. So it's what's not to like here. So once it gets to the data center, you don't decrypt it. You don't have to compress it. You just put it right in. You store it as is. And so once it's sitting there in the data center, if you have the codebook loaded into the RAM of the server that was used to compact it and encrypt it, that server can use and act on that data just like it was in the original form, which you can't do with compressed data. Not only that, it's encrypted and at the same time. So if someone steals the data and they don't have the code book, they can't use it because it's encrypted. And so all these data thefts that you read about and everything, if it's compact, if it's been encoded with Neurpac Plus, good luck. You can't get at it. This is the thing. We have 4 times more capacity in the links. So it means 4 times more bandwidth. The data is encrypted and right from the source, right from the very, very edge. And you don't have all this extra computing. You don't have to encrypt at the edge or decrypt or compress or decompress, none of that stuff. This is the new thing. You can see why this is such a big deal, right? And once it gets there, you just drop it in storage and you're done. And now it's all usable. And so that 80% of the time that the analysts spend looking for and trying to clean up data, a lot of that just goes away because you can see it. You can type in a search term when it shows up. And so it's a pretty radical, but radically better way of thinking about how data can work in this whole thing. Here's a quick summary of everything we were just talking about. So the testing is going super well, couldn't be better. And we think, again, I have the paperwork, but we think we're going to be signing up somebody pretty soon. There's a lot behind them. And so we think we're going to be looking at POs and LOIs here. And on the contracting side, the Air Force Research Laboratory loves what we're doing, wants to continue, wants to expand it. Same with the Space Force. And now soon, this Link 16 thing could be the big kahuna. Finally, about what I was just talking about, which is the idea of just taking out the whole ecosystem that's used right now for IoT, which is broken and everybody knows it. With that, I think we can move to questions.
Yeah, seems like we are getting a good amount of questions here. The first question I see here is, can you announce who the third channel partner is?
The third one. I can't say the name of it yet. We should be able to soon. The only reason we can is because nobody is focused on signing a formal partnership agreement, but they're doing all the stuff. And again, we're engaged at the CTO levels. I think there's a ton of opportunity for those guys because this is right at the core of what they do, and they love what we do, and they can see all sorts of opportunities to fold us into what they're doing. And another thing is digital twins. Actually, Boris, do you want to talk about digital twin a little?
Why, Charles, thank you. What a great question to ask.
And thanks for the ping chat.
I had this thought as you're going through it, especially in the last the slide that had the picture of the data center. This is huge. This idea of being able to take the data, the in situ data compacted, and bring those code words into a user's data architecture. It's taking a piece of paper and folding it many times, and then you make one cut and unfold it, and you've got the snowflake or whatever. That's the magic of what we have here is you bring in those code words, and now you can operate on the code words at a speed and surf across that metal layer of the data on top that you can't do before. Well, so that's cool just from a conceptual perspective, but now let's turn it into actual value, especially in the architecture of a PLC or SCADA system, where I want to actually execute command and control against large industrial items, be it gas and oil or heavy machinery or what have you, aircraft engines or ship engines. If I had a digital twin, which is now the new buzzword, right? Creating a digital twin of an existing architecture, whether it's a physical architecture like an engine or an overall system like a ship's network. If I have a digital twin, and now I can feed 2, 3, 4 times the data into my model, that digital twin with real performance as it's happening. Now, not only is my digital twin more up to date, but when I need to make a change, I can run that change through on this digital twin at the speed of machine, rather than going back to rolling up my sleeves, engineer slide rules, what happens when we do this, model it, run it through the crate, blah, blah. I can run at the speed of that network on the compacted data. And so then I can make my change because I've run my data, I've run what it looks like to make that change, and now I promote it back to the architecture. And I make that physical change to whatever that SCADA system is. That's enormous. And plus, it's a buzzword, right? And let's face it, if we want to excite customers, talking in the terms that people are excited about, AI, ML, check. Digital twin, check. So anyway, thanks for asking the question.
Thank you. And then speaking of the Ericsson POC work and a follow-up to a question I posed on the Start Engine chat, how did we fare at Inductive Automation ICC event in September? Were we able to participate with Ericsson, International Network Services, and Cyrus Link / MQTT relationship?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is going to be announced. That is, I can't go into the details, unfortunately, yet, but because we have NDAs and stuff. But I think you're going to see some fireworks there soon. That relationship couldn't be more positive. They couldn't be more enthusiastic. That you're going to see some good stuff. Sorry, I can't get more in detail. We have to maintain our confidentiality.
Yep. And with this next question, we're going to have to be vague as well. Will you announce when you get first commercial revenue?
Yes, absolutely. We will. You won't miss it because I keep waiting myself. Because at this point, we finally broken through all those things. Like, okay, it takes too long to set up, right? Engineers, focus on the setup. All right. And we got to make sure that it's proven in the field and not just over a week. It's got to do it for a while so that they actually see it under different conditions and move the site and do this stuff. So now all those things are through, and that is getting. No, I would caution, even if this first oil company has like 400 odd sites, they're not going to sign up all 400 day one. Nobody does that. They'll sign up 20 or something, and then next year we'll tick into the bigger numbers. That's the expectation.
And what year do you anticipate an IPO?
Here we go. You can't predict that too closely because you don't know what the market looks like. Like right now, the IPO market stinks. It's very tough. And it isn't a good time to go out for most companies, but it gets better and it gets easier. And the other thing is we'd have to have a decent amount of revenue. You can't go out until you have at least 100 mil of revenue. But I think we're gonna ramp here, and I'm pretty excited about the potential. I can't answer that question. All I can tell you, it's going to depend on how fast we ramp and what the market conditions are. And also, it's possible somebody swoops in and offers us a big number you can't refuse. That could happen. What you do is you focus on building value. That's what we just had an offsite, and that's what I was telling everybody. Focus on building value. The exit will take care of itself.
Great answer. And has Atombeam investigated working with Palantir for military application? It seems this might be a significant partnership.
Yeah, so I'll ask Boris to lay in here, but let me just mention, I've had conversations with very senior people at Palantir who are very interested. I haven't pushed those yet, in part because we just are so freaking overwhelmed already. But Boris, do you have anything to add there?
I think that would be a natural avenue for partnership. And we just, like Charles points out, we wanted to get through some obstacles of, okay, prove it to me. All right, prove it to me. And we were making these claims, and I'd like to use the magic 3 words: on what basis, right? Now we have bases for what we can claim. And so we're getting to the point where it's time to talk to folks like Palantir and others who are market movers.
And then things have changed so much in a good way. Are you going to put out an update around the 18-month roadmap to reflect the updated timelines and priorities?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Because, yeah, we have our 18-month plan and we're still tracking to it. But yeah, you don't start out with what you end up with ever. And even in the midtime, are we doing the things that we want to do? Yes. Are some things happening faster? Yes. Not everything. Some things are happening slower, but mostly it's better and faster and more. But that's a good idea. I think putting out another thought process on 18-month plan is a good idea. Thank you for it.
And can you describe in detail the amount of testing that is done to confirm that the messages that are received on the other end match the original message 100%?
Yeah, it rely on others like our big partners who have tested and made sure, because they're not willing, like Ericsson is going to be saying, sure, here, big customer, we haven't really tested this, but try the Atombeam stuff. It should work. No, they test it up the wazoo. So does Viasat. So does everybody, and they make sure that we do not drop any bits. It's a very proven, robust thing, and we're confident about it.
And
As are our partners.
what are you doing with Nvidia?
NVIDIA, there's some stuff going on there that I can't talk about. It's at very high levels, but I can't go into it. Sorry.
And then is the encryption going to eliminate or significantly decrease the need for cybersecurity companies?
Um,
I think there's always going to be a layered approach to cybersecurity. And I don't think we want to be upfront making any claims that we have the cybersecurity answer, because there isn't one particular answer to cybersecurity. Having said that, there are approaches to cybersecurity. The defenses after World War I that the French had, the Maginot Line, great idea, until their adversaries went through the forest that no one thought they would go through. So we have cybersecurity that at times has been a Maginot Line, and it's great until it's not. This structure of cyber strength is new in its application. Its concept is old. It's a one-time pad. It's a pad cipher, right? This is this as cryptography gets, but it's implemented in such a way that it's say radically evolved. And then when you add to that where new Neurpac Plus is going, and the application of a particular kind of, I won't tell you what it is, algorithm, then you get to an area where, wow, that this layer in cybersecurity is going to be a particularly important layer of cybersecurity in concert with others. I know I'd rather have it than not.
yeah.
And then publicly available encryption algorithms have historically proven to be better than private/slash self-created algorithms because of the huge amount of public scrutiny of them. Are we actually rolling our own encryption algorithm, and how is it better than existing public algos?
I'll start that and then hand it over to Boris to see if he wants to add anything. So I would say this, that as Boris was just saying, this is a whole new take and a different thing. And there's basically two approaches to being qualified as a cyber algo. One of them is to go through the NIST and NSA processes and get official stamps and so forth, which is a really long process. And it's not saying we won't do it, but it would be a long time before we could talk about being really true encryption. And so the other approach is to be generally accepted as a valid encryption. And so what we're undertaking now is to publish a paper, and it's in IEEE being reviewed right now, which is the big engineering thing. And so it's a definitive approach to having a broad understanding and with a reviewed paper with a ton of math in it that really you wouldn't know what end to hold it. It's really deep. So that has been submitted. The NSA also asked to look at it. So I assume that they'll let us go ahead and publish it. That approach will, once it's reviewed, peer reviewed, and people have blessed it and so forth, that gives us a way we can talk about it being encryption without going to, and it's a proof that is an encryption mathematically. So at any rate, so that's a concept. So Boris, please add anything you like.
Thanks, Charles. Yeah, I've got the metaphorical acquisition scars, scar tissue from going through the exercise of rolling my own crypto gear for a government. When I was in the government, rolling my own crypto gear for a government program because what was available didn't meet my needs. And working very closely with the NSA over a period of years, we were able to meet our timeline eventually and deliver that capability for the mission program that I had. I don't want to repeat that. instead, I'd rather pursue what we've got right now, which, as Charles points out, is a way to demonstrate empirically the performance of the protection of data from unwanted intrusion or observation. And as we show those empirical data and those results, then we can claim the performance. And then if others look at those data, and those who have the responsibility and the authority to certify performance look at those data, look at that change and say, that looks like cybersecurity to me, then we'll accept that rating of cybersecurity from those organizations. But my personal approach would be to not to use effort and resources to chase something that might just come to us in the end.
Atombeam astonishes and amazes. I'm so glad to be an investor. I will be increasing my investment yet again very soon. Thanks a million.
All right, that's a good question. That's the kind of question I like.
Had to throw that in there. And then Charles, question for you. Where are you currently? What's that behind you? And does Atombeam still have a relationship with Lockheed Martin?
Second question first. Yes, absolutely. Lockheed Martin Space specifically. And we had another call actually this morning, Boris and I, with Lockheed Martin. Emphatic yes on that. Second question is, where am I? I am in a warehouse loft office in south of Market, San Francisco, where we're doing a video shoot. And I already did some of my part. That is where I am and what I'm doing. And so there are guys out there with cameras. I don't know if we can see them out there, but they're wandering around with their cameras along with a few of our staff who are props. So anyway, so that's it. That's what we're doing. You'll see some video come out pretty soon.
And what is the target date for submitting the Link 16 proposal to DoD? How long do we expect them to consider the proposal before executing a decision?
At this point, we are in discussions with the Link 16 community about where we go from here. The Space Development Agency is looking at extending an existing contract on the basis of the performance data we're able to show them, because the Space Development Agency has a significant investment in the transport layer, i.e. the communication layer for their proliferated warfighting satellite architecture, PWSA. So the answer to that is already in work in one line of effort with the Space Development Agency, structuring our pipeline with the Link 16 offices in the DoD.
Thank you. Charles, are you involved with Harris?
With L3 Harris? Yeah. Talked to him today, in fact. So I'm a busy guy, I got to tell you. So at any rate, yeah, we are. So they have a Link 16 business that they bought from Viasat. And the CTO of that business is heavily involved with us. They're the ones who supplied us with that data sample. And we're setting up, we'll probably mount to pretty regular meetings. And we're working on a joint proposal right now. So to say the least, yes.
And then how's the hiring going?
How's the hiring going? It's going super well. We just brought in a guy one of the most important hires we've made is a guy who's a PhD in computer science who just took over as SVP engineering. His name is Jim Luciani, and Jim was previously VP engineering at Ericsson and also at, I remember, some other major companies. So he's a major leaguer. And we also have added a guy who's a mid-level guy from out of Google who left Google to join us. And that's always pretty good when you can snag a guy out of that place. And we just hired this extremely experienced, super high level guy who's helping us with the architecting of next gen Neurpac and all that. And so it's going super well. I would say in general, we have something that the high level technology guys, when they see what it is, understand it, and they want to be a part of it. And it's really, we don't have to talk people into things. And actually, we just hired a new CRO. The guy we have now could only do part-time. He couldn't take out. He was great. He is great, but he can't be full-time. We need a full-time guy. There's way too much sales activity going on for only a part-time guy. And people go nuts for this. It is a real thing and people get excited about it. So go ahead.
Yep. And then are there any more thoughts on closing the raise early and taking in some bigger money from other sources?
Yes and yes. Stand by on the first. And the second, are there discussions? Of course there are. There's always, and we have you're going to see some cool stuff emerge with this start engine stuff. And like some stuff today, they have prioritized us and they get the CEO on calls with us and the chief marketing officer, and they're involved deeply in making sure this race is successful. They really like about that. So we're jazzed, we're moving.
And while you are going through a great path with Viasat and Ericsson to sign up their customers, you are providing a service that dramatically increases the value of the Ericsson and Viasat satellites. Is there any consideration to charging Ericsson and Viasat directly for how Atombeam impacts their assets?
Wherever this was, you're hired. Okay. If you could talk them into that, what you got to remember, we're the little supplicant, but now they're getting past the point where it's here's another little company waving their arms and trying to get attention. Now they're suddenly seeing it work in the field, and they're starting to, these are big companies, right? They don't move like lightning, but more and more senior level VPs, senior VP level guys, and in one case, the CEO of a major company and the CTO of them, they're getting, not Viasat or Ericsson, but they're getting to really see what this can do for them. They don't care about us. They care about, okay, it's like you said, if my geosynchronous satellites can suddenly send 4 times more data than they could before, hello, I'm interested in that. And if you're Ericsson and you sell a box and you get $500 or whatever, and then that's the end of it. And now suddenly you can get a piece of revenue, or at least your box can send 4 times more data than everybody else's. Wouldn't you be interested in that? So yes, you're pretty interested is the answer. But I doubt we can get them they could conceivably invest in us at some point. And I think that's a real possibility, but it's a possibility at this point.
And then I apologize if I'm saying this incorrectly. Is the IE a modification of a currently existing IE RFC standard?
I don't know. Boris, do you have any response on that? I don't know.
No, I'm not familiar with our IEEE standards, with what we've been processing. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I just don't know. All I know is like just not to confuse matters. So what we're doing is we're submitting to an IEEE publication for them to publish our paper. That's what we're doing. It's not related to an IEEE standard per se.
Yeah. And then with potential revenue coming in soon, will this funding round close closer than July 2025, which I think is the official end date?
I think you should, I'm constrained by what I'm not allowed to say, but stand by for later in this week and see what happens.
Nope. I should say, if you have any questions around that or want to learn more about or stay up to date with Atombeam, visit their Start Engine page. All that information will be there.
Yeah, right.
And then any update on the Reg D? Again, we can't talk about forward-looking statements or anything like that. So we got to be vague about it.
Yeah, yep. No, that's right. I think I would say if somebody's interested in the Reg D, they should send me an email. charles.yeomans@atombeamtech.com.
Oh, there was like a couple questions around the Reg D here. Okay. I know the Forbes article fell through, but is there any thought to how to get more exposure in the financial publications?
Yeah, there definitely is. You're going to see some stuff coming out soon. And just so everybody knows what happened on the Forbes thing was unfortunately, the reporter who was going to be interviewing me died. He died of COVID. And it's very sad. I'm sorry to hear it. At any rate, and I don't know if another reporter there will pick it up or not. I can't tell you, but it's unfortunate. But in terms of other publications, I know we're expecting some to come out soon. We did win that merit award, the gold in the merit award. That's a pretty, if you poke around that site, and you see who the other winners are, it's like Oracle and companies like that. So it was a pretty big deal that we got that. But in terms of the actual publications, either financial or technical or whatever, I tell you what, I think we're going to see. I got interviewed by a couple of different ones recently. I think you're going to start to see things come out. And when they do, I will publish something in an update so everybody sees it and becomes aware of it.
And this is not a question, but another shout out. When word of Atombeam's tremendous breakthroughs get out, you're going to need security to manage the line of CEOs who want your businesses, which will wind around the block of Atombeam's HQ.
Yeah, yeah. If I made the necessary arrangements, I see that. Thanks, Tom. Yeah. There's probably going to be some former Secret Service agents out looking for work. There's some possibilities. Anyway, but we think that there's going to be, when word starts to really get out, and it really is starting to get out now. It's like this company with 12 that wants to put 12 customers on now. And things are going to start to emerge like that. And we just have to, we're going to have a management problem in terms of, we already do. We don't even chase a lot of the stuff that's on the table as possibilities because we can't overwhelm everybody. It's crazy right now how much interest there is in this thing. And we have to keep putting one foot in front of the other and making sure that all customers have a good experience, period. And so long as we do that, then I think we're going to do things right. But we're not going to rush, and we're not going to get distracted, and we're not going to focus on things that aren't important. We've got to keep our eyes on the ball, which we do.
And I think this last question is going to be the most important question. When will the AB swag t-shirts and hats be sent to those who have invested recently?
We do those after we close because we put in an order, and it's really because we don't know everybody that's come on and everything. And so as soon as we close, you will get a link or an email from the company that fulfills, which I think makes really nice stuff. And you'll get to choose, t-shirts and hats or whatever. So, one of the things we're working on too, just so everybody knows, is like, we're going to try to set up a little online store. So we're asking them to set that up for us. So that'll be cool too, if you want like other stuff or want stuff before it's available or it's not automatic or whatever. So just letting you know.
Yep. Charles, I think
swag is popular. I got to tell you, like
I know I saw my shirt, my hat. I should have worn my hat today.
There you go.
Yeah. But Charles, I think that is it with our questions here. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with? And Boris, thank you so much for hopping on here today.
And so did we get everybody's questions? I want to make sure that there aren't
Yeah.
any.
Let me take a look. Okay, there are a couple here. How many hires do you plan on bringing in next year?
It depends if we hit our number. If we hit our number, then it's probably 30 or maybe even more. If we don't hit our number, it's something less, but it just depends if we hit our number, right? So we can use them. I have people screaming internally who need more help for this and that, engineering and sales and support and blah, blah, blah. But it's some number like that. And I think, and here's another one. Richard Koch says, is there a funded Link 16 upgrade program with M&S, ORD, RFI, RFP, or is this an unsolicited proposal? So maybe Boris could address that.
Right now, there isn't a particular RFP that we're responding to, but in the context of either BS or existing room in contracts, this is where I think we can move the fastest. If we look at some of the primes and the contracts they already have in place to provide Link 16 capabilities, there is undoubtedly, there's probably maybe some doubt. I would imagine that inside those existing large contracts, there are line items for research and development. And so by working with partners like L3Harris and others, we're looking to find ways where we can flow in maybe as a sub with them to execute on existing language, because that would be fast, right? That would be money's already on the contract language is in place. We're just working on existing vehicles. That's fast. Open solicitations, like broad area announcements, that's another way we can move quickly in response to general questions like, how do I deal with a contested environment and provide expanded command and control? There are some of these BAAs are wide enough to drive a truck through them. We can look for those. And then there are just the opportunities that fall out of talking to execs and showing them good stuff. They turn to their staff and say, find me a way to figure out how to do this. And then what interests the principal often fascinates the staff. Does that answer the question?
I think so. So what it really comes down to is we're not talking about just nobody, it's unlikely that anybody's going to post that somebody in D.O.D, and it would take them like 6 months to a year to get it done anyway, is to post a BAA, which is a broad agency announcement, which means that they're requesting proposals. Does anybody have a software solution that will increase the effective bandwidth for Link 16? Almost certainly no. At any rate, yeah, no problem, Richard. I'm glad we were able to do. But yeah, a lot of it is, as Boris is suggesting, like these guys have contracts, the big ones have contracts, and they can add more to it if they come to it and say, hey, we've got a capability we want to look at. And it's great to have a big partner, and we're good.
The other thing about, it's for tail on that, Charles, I know we're running out of time here, but the other groovy thing is that you saw the TAM, the commercial TAM, and there are offices throughout the DoD who are looking for ways to take commercial technology and accelerate it into DoD application. And so that's why I get really excited about demonstrating with data how we're able to achieve performance improvements in a commercial architecture. And then if we take some minor tweaks to it, after all this money is maybe spent on development on the commercial side by either us or our potential customers, we apply it to defense needs. The Defense Department gets the benefit of that growth. Sometimes the Defense Department is willing to make the investment up front in that change because they know the play is going to be there for the long term in the commercial world, and that's going to benefit DoD in the long term. So things like TAC-FI, STRAT-FI, those things are the Air Force as an example. So there are ways where we can leverage the success we're having in the commercial market space with our oil and gas and other customers unnamed, and bring that to the DoD in contract vehicles that have nothing necessarily specifically aligned with an RFI or an RFP. Over.
Yeah. So the answer is there's a lot of avenues, right? There's tons that we can approaches here, but as Boris is saying, what's quick is working with probably L3 Harris and getting in a piece of their contract. As Boris says, the language is already there. All they need to do is ask for an expansion. And with the support we're getting from this 2-star Air Force general and on the Navy side, we should be able to get in good shape. We should be able to get something pretty quickly. Their jaws were on the floor when we showed them this stuff. As Boris was suggesting, he wasn't overstating it. They're like, whoa, you think about this is a huge problem and it's gone on forever. And what do we do? And they say, you'll go to conferences and they'll say, well, Link 16 is it, guys. Figure out how to deal with it. But if we can come to them and say, oh, it's Link 16 times 2, it's Link 32. So there you go. So I got Boris like that one. Okay, good.
Are you guys considering offering your services?
I think I want them a little more mature before we go there. I think that it's entirely possible and stuff, but I think that it feels like it's inevitable. And it's only a question of, that's one of the reasons we shovel so much and patents out the door. We've got to make sure that we're protected up the wazoo before we expose it too much. And so it's a huge priority, but yeah, it feels like it's going to happen and I don't know when.
And then last question here, who's the designated transfer agent for Atombeam Equity?
Right now it's Start Engine. And we don't have a plan to move that. So yeah, they're the transfer agent.
Awesome.
They have some kind of subsidiary, I can't remember what they call it, but that's what it is.
And that is all of our questions. Charles, Boris, thank you for your time. I know we went a little over, but it is great that we answered every question that we have here. Charles, any final words?
I think it's terrific that everybody came to this and participated. And I love the enthusiasm. It's just this revs us all up because I share that with what people say with the broader community of Atombeam, and people here are really excited about what we're doing. And it's always great to have that get through so that people all see it. And the other thing is I want to express my appreciation to Boris for coming. He's on vacation and he got shanghaied. And so Boris, dinner's on me. So anyway, so thank you very much, everybody, for coming. And I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll see you next time.